All right, greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Monday, March 10th, 2025. And on Mondays, we look at statistics and mathematics. I should mention, by the way, that a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, I've screwed up the dates at the beginning of these vlogs. And that's kind of ironic, but especially today because I'm talking about time. So I thought it'd be interesting to evaluate the concept of time, talking about it a bit mathematically, but also a bit more philosophically, as you'll see. So I've always been fascinated by time. Maybe you have as well. I do remember quite well as a youngster thinking just how long the summers seemed to feel. As a child of about 5 or 6, I remember thinking that the summers used to last forever. And yet in my 60s, I think quite the opposite, or how fast the days fly and how the seasons change so quickly. Both perceptions are remarkably accurate and consistent with our experiences. Consider the time spent from age 1 to age 2. That single year represents 50% of your entire lifespan up to that point. Now, of course, you likely don't remember anything necessarily that happened that year, but then consider just living from the age of 4 to age 5. On your 5th birthday, if you look back on that preceding year, that 1 year preceding your 5th birthday would have constituted 20% of your lifetime. So you went from 50% from 1 to 2 down to 20% from 4 to 5. The obvious point is that each additional year that we live represents a smaller and smaller sliver proportionally of your total time spent on the planet. And as such, it always feels like time is speeding up, and we nostalgically talk about how time flies. So while the newly minted 5-year-old has just completed a year that represented 20% of their life, the year preceding your 50th birthday represents a mere 2% of your entire lifespan up to that point. So it's still a full year, but relative to the fullness of your time on the planet, it certainly feels a lot shorter. And we might find ourselves asking, where did the time go? We are always flying faster and faster and further into the future, which partly reflects, too, the reality that we are in motion all the time. We as physical beings, as human beings, are in motion constantly and giving off heat and energy. But we're on a planet that's constantly in motion, around a sun that's constantly in motion. That is a solar system that's constantly in motion, in a galaxy that's constantly in motion. So indeed, we are always moving forward in some way or another. It's impossible to stand still. But let's think about this matter not in terms of the years that we've lived, but let's shift the unit of analysis to the days that we've lived. Okay? How many days have you been alive? Well, that's fairly straightforward, except for the leap year problem. In general, we have 365 days in each year. And every 4th year, we add a day. And in fact, you could actually change the metric, and you could talk about each year as 365.25 days, roughly. And you'd be pretty accurate, okay? Then just a fraction or two. But my point is that if you look at that measure, if you look at the 365.25 days each year on average, then that means when you turn age 4, after you've lived 4 years outside of your mother's womb, or outside of the test tube, whatever the case may be, you will have lived 1,461 days at that point. So, and we'll all pass then, if we live long enough, our 10,000th day at some point in our 27th year. Although, again, be careful if you're a musician and you hit the age of 27. There's the ill-fated 27 club. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of. If you're in that club, you may or may not have passed your 10,000th day, depending upon the day of your passing. But, of course, this refers to the select group of exceptional performers and typically musicians who died tragically in their 27th year. We're talking about, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Brian Jones of the Beach Boys, and Jim Morrison, and later Kurt Cobain in the 90s, and then even more recently, Amy Winehouse. And there are many others. But what we know is that if you're going to live that long, you'll have passed, at some point in your 27th year, 10,000 days. And then, of course, by merely doubling that figure, you know that you're going to pass your 20,000th day at some point just before your 55th birthday. Okay? Again, you can calculate the actual numbers of days that you've lived on the planet. Now, most of us don't do that. We're happy tracking the years. It's a little simpler to keep track of that specific number. After it all, only changes once a year. In my case, and some of you actually kind of know this, well, you don't know the specific number, but I managed to live, I should say, 21,414 days before I ran into a serious roadblock, as it were, and then died on that particular day. And it's not really a roadblock. It was more of a pulmonary blockage. There was a massive saddle pulmonary embolism. But thankfully, my wife was there, and I died twice, but she revived me both times. Good for her. I'm sure she had her doubts about that, but nonetheless, she managed. And eventually, the ambulance came, got me to the hospital, etc. And so I've been on blood thinners ever since that particular day. And I'll be on them the rest of my life, as far as I know. But here's the key issue there. By being revived, okay, and then using the blood thinners and regaining my full health, I've now lived an additional 1,165 days, right? So while I'm not celebrating my birthday today, I am celebrating day number 22,579. Not too shabby. So, of course, that means my life, by any measure of longevity, is clearly more than half over. I mean, Jean Calment she's the woman who holds the record, the contemporary world record, at least as far as we know, for the longest life at 122 years, 164 days. And so that's about 44,682 days. So, ever the optimist, I don't like to think of my life as being half over. If I can break Jean's record and live well into my 124th year, in fact, then I can say that just now, maybe I'm reaching about 50%. But rather than saying my life is half over, I'd like to say that it's half full, or it's half completed, okay? But now, more realistically, if I could live to, say, 100, and that is something that seems to be within reach, at least within consideration, then I'll think of my life now as being about 62% full, or 62% completed. But whatever happens, I'd rather suggest that I've lived a life that's been 100% full, at least at the end, however many years or days I may have been granted. So, another thought along these lines, I want to shift the focus to a more practical set of considerations. So it's common, everybody understands that there are 24 hours in a day, although technically slightly less, but 24 hours a day will serve our purposes here. So, and if we factor in 60 minutes per day, 60 minutes per each hour, then that means we enjoy about 1,440 minutes each day. And that's, by the way, more than 500,000 minutes. It's in fact specifically 525,600 minutes each year. And if you live to, say, 80 years of age, then you'll manage to have lived more than 40 million minutes. In fact, 42.1 million minutes in an 80-year lifespan. Of course, you'll spend about a third of that asleep, roughly, and obviously that's going to vary from person to person. And so that might mean you'll have, say, for example, about 28 million minutes of being awake in the world. And I think we can forgive ourselves if we waste a few of those 28 million minutes that we're awake here and there, whatever wasting a minute or wasting time might mean to you. Don't be hard on yourself. Not every minute has to be planned and down to the very second. And daydreaming and just relaxing or unwinding should always be part of our daily routines. But at the same time, we can, and I think we should, aspire to string together some valuable and meaningful minutes each day. Your endeavors obviously are quite diverse depending on who you are, who I am, and they include the many types of work that we do to sustain ourselves, the productive work. Usually it's some kind of paid work, but it doesn't have to be. And all of that then can be done more successfully if we break down our working habits into smaller chunks. It's difficult for most of us to stay as energetic and as focused for an extended period of time. So typically we'll need breaks. We'll try to set up a work schedule in which we can be most productive. And again, we can talk another day about what that involves and how you accomplish that each, or what our strategies are to accomplish that. But obviously that's an important part, and you should engage in some productive work, whatever that work might mean for you and your talents and what you quote unquote do for a living. And I mean that too, even if you're retired, okay? But in addition, focus some of your energy to maintaining your household or your living environment. Not every day, obviously, has to be a full-fledged cleaning day. In fact, I don't even like the concept of cleaning days, although, to be fair, we all probably have to do them or have to schedule them because things do build up. But my point here is that why not commit each day to, or at least a few minutes each day, to one particular chore or a small issue in your household that needs attention, okay? In my view, it's better to do a little bit of something each day rather than let yourself be overwhelmed, especially with the magnitude of a bigger problem or something that really needs to be fixed or repaired. Those things are going to come up too. But at least on an everyday basis, it's like managing your inbox for your email. You spend a few minutes organizing, going through, and doing something and attending to those emails, to that inbox, attending to the inbox of your household, well, you'll find yourself getting things under control pretty darn quickly. Okay? And of course, you matter too. You should self-consciously attend to your physical needs every day through sensible eating, through hygiene, whatever exercise would seem to be appropriate for you and your condition, your situation. Okay? And then don't stop with yourself. I'd encourage you as well to commit some time every day to either helping other people or caring for animals or plants or otherwise doing something to improve the planet. Okay? And then every day, you should also spend some minutes attempting to do something creative, whatever your talents or abilities might be. I'm talking about creativity in the broadest sense of literally creating something with your hands, with your words, with your mind, with your imagination. And all those moments that are spent in creativity are certainly going to preclude the opposite, which is engaging in destructive behaviors. So yeah, I'm all for figuring out how to do creative stuff rather than destructive stuff. And there should be as well those moments each day that you spend in spiritual pursuits or meditation, or if you're not particularly spiritually inclined, just practicing gratitude. And so my view is that if you do all of these things, that is, if you spend some time, a few minutes each day dreaming and relaxing, producing, doing productive work, household chores or management, personal care, exercise, helping others or the planet in general, doing something creative, and praying or reflecting and or expressing gratitude, then you'll need not worry about wasted minutes or wasted time. The extra minutes will be there to do whatever you want, in fact, including nothing at all, or perhaps catching up on some sleep. So most important, if you can manage to spend your minutes and some time thinking about the mission, your mission, organizing yourself, do a little bit of in each of the different realms that I've just mentioned, then you'll find yourself having put together a full day, a great day, perhaps. And almost certainly you'll have no regrets about that particular day, at least on an ongoing basis, if you are able to follow or discipline yourself to get into these healthier habits about how you spend and divvy up your precious minutes each day. Okay? So start with one day. And guess what? You'll almost certainly prove to yourself that you're able to have a great day, filled with many different activities and balanced with some downtime and rest and reflection and so on. And you'll almost certainly go to bed feeling good about that particular day. For me, it's a lot like the fasting that my wife and I are doing for Ramadan. We're in the middle of it right now. We're just not even quite a third of the way through. It's overwhelming for me to think about fasting every day from sunup to sundown. This is not something that I grew up with, by the way. So it's definitely a challenge. And so instead, I concentrate on the first day and prepare accordingly. And with focus and commitment, I always have had a successful first day. And then we go on to day 2 and so on. Now we're 9 days in or so. And every day's been a successful one. And so this is my point. Once you've had one successful day, you can put that in the bank, and then you can plan for the next day. And in developing the habits associated with living a good, healthy, productive, and yet both relaxing and still meaningful day, you'll start to string together a streak of excellent days. There may be setbacks, to be sure, but then start anew, start afresh each day, every day. And before you know it, you're putting together one remarkable day after another. And those days in combination then produce your years, and you arrive at your next birthdays. And those years, whether they're 25 or 95, comprise our lifetimes. So to be clear, you can count the days that you have lived, and I've done that in part earlier on the vlog, but I'd rather focus on the days ahead. Again, for neither you nor I know how many we might be promised. Instead, my reasoning is that if I strive to live each day with integrity and with balance and with creativity and in accordance with my mission as I understand it, then that's what matters. And perhaps most radically of all, I honestly don't worry about whether today's my last day or not, or what might happen in the future. Instead, I'm just trying to live each day, though not every single minute, I'll be honest, but in accordance with my life's mission. And that's about all I can do. And I'm satisfied with that. Many people are fearful or panicked about their own mortality. They know it's going to arrive eventually. But it's always struck me as interesting as to why people are so afraid of death. Especially since nowadays, I don't have those concerns. I don't have a view of life that allows me to think in terms of what if I die? It's quite the opposite. I'd be more concerned if I hadn't lived properly. So sure, I aim to live many more years. And if that happens, great. I'll be most thankful and grateful. And it'll essentially mean that I've just had more energy to expend, or perhaps more that needed to be done. I don't know what the ultimate purpose is in that sense. But when that final moment arrives, that final minute, that last breath, I'm okay with that. And I genuinely mean that. I was even okay with it when it happened to me. I was just frustrated because I felt like I still had so much more to do. And I was right. So thanks to my wife, thanks to our medical system, thanks to everybody around me, I'm back. And I get, I don't know how many more days. But I'm just grateful for everyone that I do have. Okay? And so where I'm going with this too is that it doesn't mean that, well, let me put it this way. I'm just trying to live as authentic a life and use my energies as best I can to positive effect. And that's what I advise for you. If you do that as well, then you really don't have any reason, I would argue, to fear death or to express deep regrets. Express apologies on occasion and say, I'm sorry, and make amends as needed. But that's different. That just means that you're a flawed, normal human being and you've made some mistakes, and that's okay. But here's what's true every minute of every day. And I mean this as deeply as I could mean anything. I cannot for a moment fathom living a life where I'm living a mean-spirited or hateful or hurtful life or lifestyle. And yet I see many people who have and continue to live lives of spite or exploitation, or who have concocted all manner of justifications for why they should hurt and hate or destroy others. So anytime I think that you're locked into a cycle of anger and hatred and you seek to harm others or to harm the planet, then I would argue that's when you're wasting your life. And only then. Conversely, every minute that you spend pursuing your creative gifts, sharing your positive energy in the best ways that you know how, then you're living a successful and fulfilling life. Oh, my, look at the time. I've got to go. So until next time, may you and yours, as ever, continue to create peace in your lives and nurture love in your hearts, and take a minute or more to give someone a hug who might need one. And we'll see you next time.